Oh, wow. Right as we get on camera, of course, I get a twitch in my eye. Hello there, everybody, and welcome back to Circling Seattle Sports on Converge Media. Of course, as always, I am your host, Charles Hamaker. Yeah, that is great timing as we get to the height of the show. We're back. Very difficult past few weekends that lead into Monday when we record our show. This episode is being recorded on Sunday night, actually, after the final Mariners game of that current homestand and the final the week 2 Seahawks game. A lot going on. I don't have a phone right now, so if there's anybody out there who's watching this who's been trying to contact me, not going to work. Because of that, we've had a lot of stuff going on recently, so stuff we're working towards. So wasn't able to have last week's episode as the final storm game of the season took place. The Mariners played that day, and then the very next day in the morning, we had storm exit interviews and the start of a Mariners homestand that we're going to get into when we get into the Mariners news. So yeah, a lot going on. So I appreciate you bearing with us. We're back for this week's episode. This will be the 18th of September. This episode will come out right before the Mariners play on the road in Oakland. They'll have a 6:40 p.m. start. Regardless, we will get into it with Seahawks-related news as they look to bounce back from that frustrating loss against the Rams, where the quote came out a few times, or words similar to it, that Seattle didn't want it as much as the Rams, which is a big problem, a really big problem, especially in week 1. You've got all these expectations you put upon yourself in the offseason. You bounce back and you're able to find your edge and get into it against the Lions in Detroit. Now, obviously, if you follow the NFL world, if you follow football, you know that Detroit went into the reigning Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs home and beat them. And it was a big deal for them. It was a big deal for this Lions team. They had shown some improvement this offseason after having an overachieving year last year. Some would argue overachieving, but they played really well last season. And there's a lot of hype around them. And so Detroit was really excited to welcome their Lions back to Ford Field. And with Seattle being without their offensive tackles and kind of being banged up, being weak after this game, was like, okay, all the momentum was with Detroit, right? And then the way things went about it, Seahawks actually were in control of this game for a decent amount of time. They would come out winning this one 37-31. Seattle wins it in overtime on a Tyler Lockett catch from Geno Smith. Tyler ends up poking the ball out, as you'll see it in the – no, not that one. Poking the ball out to hit the pylon for his second touchdown of the day, giving the Seahawks the win, their first win of the season. They bounced back. They actually had a 10-point lead at one point in the fourth quarter after Trey Brown had a pick 6 to get them back into it. I believe Ken Walker had 2 touchdowns in this one. So overall, pretty solid game. There's definitely some things to work on. Obviously, he had to go to overtime. He had a 10-point lead in the fourth. He would like to have kept that lead, but they walk out of Ford Field with the win. That game, again, could have gone a lot worse. You're without both starting tackles and Charles Cross and Abraham Lucas. Jason Peters, who, many will know the team signed, was unable to go after getting signed just earlier in the week. A few things happened, but it's much better outlook, obviously, this week after the win against Detroit. Again, a very game Detroit Lions team. I really think that Lions team will win a good amount of games this season. And we might have to see them again at some point, whether that's playoffs or what have you. Which is kind of funny to say considering the Lions, just because they haven't had the best luck of things for a while. But again, I give them a lot of credit. Offensive player of the game, I went with Tyler Lockett. 8 receptions, 59 yards, 2 touchdowns, including that game-winning touchdown in overtime. We've talked about it here in Seattle for years, how Tyler Lockett is underrated. I just don't want to use that word anymore. Tyler Lockett's one of the best receivers in the National Football League, and he's in an incredibly talented wide receiver core of DK himself Jackson Smith and Jigba, and a few other names here. Obviously, Jake Bobo got a lot of attention in preseason. That's why I went with Tyler Lockett there, just because he's a consummate veteran, doing great stuff off the field as well, but still such a valuable part of this receiving core as he's become one of the patent veterans of this roster. And then on the defensive side of the ball, he didn't have a great game last week against Los Angeles, but Trey Brown had a nice week this week in the win against the Lions. As I mentioned, there was a pick six. Trey Brown had that pick six. 4 tackles in this game, all of them solo, 1 sack, a tackle for loss, 2 pass deflections to boot with that interception, and 1 quarterback hit. So kind of an all-around game for the corner Trey Brown after his name kind of went. This young secondary for Seattle has so many names. Julian Love had a solid game in terms of his statistics. But you look at Devon Witherspoon, who made his NFL debut. He did give up a touchdown. The Lions had a flea flicker, and he kind of bit on the move that the receiver made. So sure, it's a rookie. He's going to make that mistake. So even veterans get beaten on the flea flicker. So it was a tough one there. But overall, he made some big plays. Devon Witherspoon made a big pass deflection on 4th down in the second half of this game. So, pretty solid, especially if you look at some of the names that were on the injury report. On the injury report, Jamal Adams still out. He is expected to be good to go this week. Charles Cross is still out with a toe injury. Defensive end Mike Morris was questionable, and linebacker, Mike Morris was out. Questionable were linebackers Boye Mafe with a knee injury, and linebacker Devin Bush with a shoulder injury. We look at the inactives list. Bush inactive, Jamal Adams obviously inactives for that one. No Bush, no Mafe. McClendon Curtis, who the team picked up off of waivers earlier in the week as well, in addition to Peters as an offensive lineman, he was out. Offensive tackle Charles Cross was not able to go. Offensive guard Ben Brown was out. And then, as I mentioned, Mike Morris out as well. So some notable injuries there. In terms of injuries that related to the game itself, 3 players left during the game with questionable to return designations. DK Metcalf had a ribs issue that he left with. Tariq Woolen had a chest issue, both of them in the first half. They were both DK was able to return to the game. Center Evan Brown left with a knee injury. So early on, these first 2 weeks of the season, Seattle's dealing with injuries, but it was really positive to see this win. Really, really hats off job to both Stone Forsyth and Jake Curran. Forsyth on the left, Curran playing right tackle. There was 1 sack, and it was really, really credited to Gino. And outside of that, there wasn't much going on for the Detroit pass rush. The Seattle tackles did a great, great job in this one, filling in for their starter counterparts. Jason Peters was credited with helping these tackles get ready. They said that they were happy with the progress that Jason Peters made in the week leading up to it, but they didn't feel like it was good to give him that starting role and push him into the lineup just a few days after they had acquired him and after he had quote unquote gotten up off the couch. So it was a really impressive win to go in there into Detroit. Again, I really do think that this Lions team is going to be a hard one to beat throughout the course of the year. They've got a couple of great components that make them a good football team, and Seattle, again, they probably should have won this game in regulation, but they were able to get the win regardless. 10 a.m. start, and they're going to come back, and they're going to have to play a rookie quarterback in Bryce Young this week back at home. So ideally, if you had played a lot better, you played like yourselves in week 1, you take that win. The Rams did put up a good fight against the 49ers as well in their game this Sunday, but 101, fine, doable. But if you look, this was a talk of a lot of the week leading into this game, that teams that go 0-2 really struggle later on in the season, making the playoffs, let alone going to the Super Bowl and winning it. So good start median start, but good in this one to get this win. Satisfying, happy flight home. You come back, you play a rookie quarterback, try to get after him, play a Panthers team that looks a little different than these Panthers teams that the Seahawks have played earlier in years before, where it was just like we were playing the Panthers every single year. as I've mentioned and talked heavily about, Jason Peters on the 12th signed with the team, as well as offensive tackle Greg Island, both of those to the practice squad. As a corresponding move, the team released quarterback Holton Eilers and safety Brady Breeze to make room for those guys there. So the Seahawks, as I mentioned, sit in a 1-1 record as of this current moment. They are third in the NFC West at this time. Let me get you the NFC West standings, because it's an interesting stakeout so far. It would have been more interesting if the Cardinals had actually held on to their 21-point lead, but they blew that to the Giants. So the 49ers sit atop it with a 2-0 win-loss record, which is sort of expected, at least for them. They were talked about as being a powerhouse through the offseason. The Rams are 1-1 and hold the tiebreaker over the Seahawks. And the Seahawks sit at third in the NFC West, as the Cardinals sit at 0-2 at this point in time. But yeah, they had a really big lead against the Giants in their game this week. The Seahawks' next game, September 24th, at home at Lumen Field versus the Carolina Panthers, a 1:05 Pacific time start. As I mentioned, they'll face a Carolina Panthers team that looks a little bit different. They're going through some changes, and they've got young Bryce Young at the helm there. They're playing tonight, actually. Well, as you're seeing this, it's tonight. A Panthers team that's playing Monday Night Football against the Saints for week 2. The Panthers are 0-1 at the time of this recording. I don't know what it'll be after the Monday night game, obviously, but look very different. The number 1 overall pick will come to Seattle, and the Seahawks will look to build some momentum and get a win streak going. We stop there with the Seahawks and we move over here to the Mariners and then talk about win streak. It's not what happened in Seattle, unless you count a 2-gamer, which in baseball, especially with how many games they play. Anyway, we go over here. It was a homestand filled with the Los Angeles teams, and I say Los Angeles in air quotes because obviously, as I've talked about for years when we do Circling Seattle Sports on Converge, the Angels don't particularly play in Los Angeles. Regardless, the Angels took game 1 of this series, a September 11th win for the Angels, 5-8 loss for the Mariners in extra innings. Our player of the game, center fielder Julio Rodriguez, who was in this photo of the game by our photographer Sage Zipeto, 4 hits, 2 runs and 2 RBIs. His 2-run homer in the 10th inning of this game tied it up, but it wasn't enough, as the Angels would kind of pile on there in the 11th, and the Mariners were unable to respond. With that home run, Julio became the 44th player in Major League Baseball history to join the 30-30 club, and joined 3 other players who did so under the age of 22. Well, at or under the age of 22. So that was nice to see that history, but even after the game, Julio didn't really want to talk about it. I was really upset that the team wasn't able to get the win there. But he was much happier to talk about it. To talk more so about the team's win after the fact that they got their next game, September 12th, versus the Angels, an 8-0 win, a shutout victory. You can see Julio's expression there in that photo by Anthony May. 2 players of the game in this 8-0 win: third baseman Eugenio Suarez, 2 hits, 2 runs, 2 RBIs, and a walk, including a solo homer for the Mariners third baseman, and starting pitcher Brian Wu. Brian Wu, so much can be said about the rookie pitchers for this Mariners organization, whether it's him or Bryce Miller coming in and taking the starting rotation roles, with Robbie Ray being down for the season, with Marco Gonzalez being out for the season. 2 guys who, no matter how you feel about them, are inning eaters. And Wu and Miller have been able to do an excellent job, and especially in this series. We'll get to Miller's start later on, as he was our player of the game for the day that he started. But Wu, 5 2/3 innings pitched, 4 hits, no runs, no walks, and 8 strikeouts. It was arguably one of the better games he had pitched statistically. And looking at some of the deeper numbers, whether it's the pitches and the whiffs and all that, so it was excellent to see that. That was really satisfying. So the Mariners, that win set up the rubber match, and they would take that one on September 13th, a 3-2 win. Very tight one. Our player of the game, center fielder Julio Rodriguez. Julio, 1 hit, 1 run, 1 RBI, and 1 walk. And our photo of the game here, Julio and starting pitcher Luis Castillo La Piedra had an excellent game. Kind of tough, got some things, but largely had a great game. Just not nearly enough run support. They would get that later to get the win. And Julio, two of the Mariners' best players, in that one photo right there, kind of messing around with each other. So they got the rubber match. They win the series there. They would get a day off before they hosted the LA Dodgers, one of the best teams in all of baseball. And the Mariners, unfortunately, I know I joked about it the last few weeks with the broom. The broom is here in the room. I don't mean to rhyme, but kind of sad. We don't typically do that when the Mariners get swept. September 15th versus the Dodgers, a 3-6 loss. Our player of the game, third baseman Eugenio Suarez, 1 hit, 1 run, 1 RBI, a solo homer. Not a lot of offense going on early, as the Dodgers had young starting pitcher Bobby Miller out there. Bobby Miller is a hell of a pitcher. Great fastball, hits 100. Big pitcher, and has a solid arsenal of off-speed pitches as well. He dueled off against George Kirby, and Kirby, he had an all right game, but ultimately the Mariners just didn't do enough on offense didn't do enough on offense to support that and keep this going. And then the bullpen could only do so much later on. They kind of got the Dodgers pulled away late. You can see our photo of the game here. Teoscar Hernandez in the final at-bat of the game kind of walks off, wondering what went wrong with this game. Game 2, unfortunately, the photo of the game is going to look similar. A 2-6 loss. Our player of the game, right-handed pitcher Bryce Miller, through his tenure, 5 1/3 innings pitched, 4 hits, 0 runs, 1 walk, and 4 Ks. I mean, again, in September here, you've got Wu and Miller contributing valuable innings for the Mariners, and at least in these games, not getting nearly enough to any run support. The Dodgers would be able to pull away late with that one. In extra innings, and it just wouldn't matter enough. Wait, was this in extra innings? I don't think so. The Dodgers pulled away is what mattered. And ultimately, they would lose this series here. And you think, well, in that win as well, the Dodgers actually clinched the National League West Division for the 10th time in the past 11 seasons. So the next day, they wheeled out their quote-unquote hangover lineup, as they rested some guys like Freeman. This was an extra innings. Yeah. Oh, gosh. The Dodgers scored 5 runs in the 11th. Yeah. So our photo of the game here, Julio Rodriguez walking off after the last plate appearance, just, obviously not happy about it. So anyway, the Mariners, you'd think, with Logan Gilbert on the mound, who hadn't lost in quite some time, and playing the hangover lineup, quote-unquote, you think, okay, they should be able to salvage this game, take a win. And what's frustrating about those first 2 losses of the series is that both the Rangers and Astros had lost their respective games as well. So you had chances to gain ground, and you just kind of spat on them. They spat on this as well, as they lost 1-6 in the final game of the series at homestand. And the photo of the game is a little more positive, as the Mariners celebrated Hispanic Heritage Day, and both players from the Mariners and the Dodgers met behind home plate to take this photo pregame with their native flags. This one was just incredible. I mean, in the second inning, the Mariners did get a run. They were creating traffic for those first few innings, and then there was just nothing. The Dodgers hammered Logan Gilbert from the start of this game, and it was tough because if you look at the pitch locations of where the Astros, pardon me, it's a sin to call Dodgers Astros, where the pitches to these Dodger players were in regards to where their big hits came from, they weren't exactly bad pitches. The Dodgers got good one on them, and this is the Dodgers quote-unquote hangover lineup. So just a really, really frustrating effort, and it was really odd to see the last few innings of this, when most of the game after those first 2 innings was just the energy wasn't there, whether it was on the field for the Mariners or in the stands. And this was a sellout. There was a sellout crowd of 45,000 plus. And it was just lifeless. I mean, the problem is everybody blamed the pitching this weekend, which I don't find correct. In the third game where Gilbert got hammered early on, sure, fine, whatever. But again, one run isn't going to beat anybody most of the time, right? Those first 2 games, Kirby didn't necessarily struggle, but that wasn't the main issue. The Mariners, we went into extra innings, and it just wasn't. They weren't doing enough. They were generating traffic in games 1 and 2, yes, but they didn't get. Scott Service always talks about it being the timely hit, the big hit to kind of. No, that's stupid. I'm going to look up George Kirby's game log, and it's telling me George Kirby is a great fit for the San Francisco Giants. Shut up. This game, 6 innings pitched, 5 hits, 4 runs, 4 of them earned, a homer, 2 walks, 7 strikeouts. Yeesh. Ultimately didn't look good. But the pitches weren't bad either in this one. Anyway, offensively, 1 run in the 4th, 2 in the 6th, and then that's not able to do. Yeah, they ended up falling off. Still not enough. Homer. Yeah, still not enough. It's just not enough. Getting traffic, not being able to push him over. The big stat that I looked at the end of this series, immediately after the Mariners got swept, was the Mariners went 4 for 33 with runners in scoring position this series. That's just unacceptable. That is really, really unacceptable. And they had that issue on Monday against the Angels, but then in the next 2 games, they were much better. They had a lot of runs with 2 outs, which was funny. So it's just the same sort of thing that we were looking at in the first half of the season, where they had generated traffic. They just weren't able to push it through. A lot of chasing. So it's not great. It's not great. Even in the game 2, when it was Miller versus Kershaw didn't start the game out very well. In the first 2 innings, the control really wasn't there. And even then, with the control not being there, the Mariners were chasing at pitches. I understand it. He's got the big, the curve ball and the slider, but the control aspect of it, it's frustrating. And this is obviously a time that you got to be locked in. You got to be focused. They saged the clubhouse on Tuesday. That was all great and dandy and woohoo. But I might need to sage the whole stadium after something like that. You get swept in that fashion. So Annie Huzit, our player of the week, pardon me. Shortstop JP Crawford. JP, 6 hits, 1 run, 4 extra base hits, 4 RBIs, 2 walks, a 273 batting average, a 333 on base percentage, a 455 slugging percentage, and a 788 OPS. We have a few other things relating to the Mariners from the past week. On the 11th, we got a Tom Murphy update from general manager Justin Hollander. He has a small fracture in his thumb, and at that point, he had been shut down from baseball activity for the past 10 days. This was on the 11th. He said this. The thumb is currently in a splint, and the Mariners will have to make a decision on the 22nd of this month, which is in 4 days by the time this comes out, whether or not they're going to be able to bring him back and get him back onto the roster, or if they're going to shut him down. In other team-related news, the same day on the 11th, Jared Kelenic had been reinstated from the 10-day injured list as a corresponding move. What just happened with the lights? Oh, that bulb went out. That's great. As a corresponding move, outfielder Caden Marlowe was optioned down to AAA Tacoma. On the 12th, right-handed pitcher Luke Weaver was claimed off waivers from the New York Yankees. And the teams, by the New York Yankees, not from. Pardon me. Also, as a corresponding move, and Hollander mentioned this on the 11th, but the actual roster move took place on the 12th. Catcher Luis Torrens was selected from AAA Tacoma, and the team placed catcher Brian O'Keefe on the paternity list. So since then, O'Keefe has been reinstated from the paternity list and sent down to AAA Tacoma. At this time, the Mariners sit at an 81-68 record. They are 3rd in the American League West. They're 2.5 games back from the top of the division, 1 game out of a wild card spot at this time. I talked about it. The Astros and Rangers have been losing games, but the Blue Jays have not. So the Mariners find themselves out of a playoff spot, and they really need to kick things into high gear. It starts with a 3-game set on the road in Oakland at the Coliseum with the first 2 games, 18th and 19th of this month, being 6:40 p.m. Pacific time first pitches, and then game 3 of the series, the getaway game, is a 12:37 p.m. first pitch on September 20th. As at this current point in time, being where they're at, having been swept, you probably need to sweep the Athletics, and that's been shown to be no easy feat, whether it be by the Mariners or some of the series that the Athletics have played throughout the course of their season. After that 3-game set against the Athletics, the Mariners will travel down to Texas to play another American League West rival in the Texas Rangers, a team they really have struggled against this year. And in 6 games played head-to-head, they've only won 1 of them. So first pitch on the 22nd of this game is a 5:05 p.m. first pitch. And then September 23rd at the Rangers, a 4:05, leading us to a September 24th game against the Rangers in 11:35 a.m. first pitch. This begins a really big stretch for the Mariners against both the Rangers and the Astros, where they'll need to be at their very best, whether that be focused, locked in, whatever the hell you may have it be. We're in the final 13 games of the season at this current point in time. But by then, it's the final 10 games, and 7 of those last 10 games of the year are against the Texas Rangers. This very well, any playoff hope, any division title hope could come down to whether or not the Mariners are able to do well against the Rangers, let alone Houston. So it's a really, really big week. And it's going to get wild. It's going to get really wild. We're going to do our very best to stay on top of all of it. It's really big. Every game in September has been really big, and the Mariners have really fallen flat on their face so far in the month of September. So we go over here to our Storm, who wrapped up the regular season. There's some team notes as all the players now have, we go into the offseason. Jewell Loyd has signed a 2-year extension, which is some of the biggest news in Seattle basketball. Some awards as her year has ended. Not all of the official WNBA awards have been announced. I believe today, former Storm player Alicia Clark was named the 6th person of the year. She's with the Aces, and the playoffs already started. I think game 3, a lot of game 3s in round 1 are taking place tonight, actually. When this is aired. So anyway, on September 11th, Jewell Loyd officially was named the 2023 scoring leader with 24.7 points per game, and obviously with her last game became the WNBA single season scoring leader with 939 points. So again, we talked about throughout the year, Jewell, historic tear, a historic run, and it was great because the day before the final game of the season, it was announced that she would be re-signing for a 2-year deal, which helps a lot because then I don't have to talk about it every week whether or not Jewell is going to come back. Something that was from exit interviews, Gabby Williams, she's unlikely to play in the WNBA this year due to her prior obligations with the French national team, her French league as well. Also because of the WNBA's prioritization rule. So something to note there. We probably won't see Gabby back this year in any capacity, which kind of sucks. So, on September 12th, it was announced that both Jewell Loyd and Jordan Horston were named to respective all AP teams. Loyd named to the AP All WNBA first team, while Horston was named to the AP All Rookie team. Both of these players, I mean, from the first few days that we got to be around Jordan Horston, I thought, hey, it will be a lot of fun to see her play with Jewell Loyd for an extended period of time. And I think that's only going to be more and more true as Horston has this offseason to take what she learned from the WNBA this year and apply it, maybe add some more muscle weight there. Great, lanky, athletic defender, and really found her confidence as the season went on. We all know what Jewell Loyd can do, but to see those two kind of ping off each other, I think they can be a really incredible duo in this league. And it'll be exciting to see them both continue to play in a Storm jersey. And I'm very thankful that because of Loyd's extension, we get to see that play out. And it's not like, okay, who's going to fill into this role, what Seattle does in the offseason. No, I don't have to worry about none of that because Jewell has been re-signed, and that is just excellent. Excuse me. So we go over here. We continue to roll along. We've got Sounders-related news, and kind of like the last time we talked about Sounders, it's not bad. It's not bad. They split points with FC Dallas on the road. September 16th at FC Dallas, a 1-1 draw. Our player of the match, right wingback Reed Baker-Whiting. Because of this performance, he was named to the MLS's team of the match day, which is essentially a team of the week. Reed had a 8.2 match rating. Actually, he played left. I apologize. He played left wingback, not right wingback. Normally he's right wing back. He played left wing back this week. 8.2 match rating, 1 assist, 1 shot, a 91% pass percentage, and 2 chances created. This game was interesting. The Sounders conceded a goal within the first 15 minutes. It just didn't look very good. They weren't able to generate much. But in the second half, they looked like a much better team. And FC Dallas, it was like essentially a flip of what had happened in the first half. And so the Sounders split points with FC Dallas. The injury report is as follows. Leo True is out with suspension. Kellen Rowe was out still with the right quad strain. He's dealt with that injury for a large amount of the season at this point. Cody Baker and Christian Roldan were both in concussion protocol, but Roldan was in this game and did play in this game and actually did get hit in the head, which was really frustrating, hit in the face, which is really frustrating just because he's dealt with that concussion injury for a while there. It was like, hey, are we even going to see him back this season? And thankfully, he got out of it and seemed to be fine. So that part's good. That was a really sort of I was watching this during the Mariners game and it was like, hey, let's not hit Christian Roldan. That'd be great. But I want to look at this. Right? Because normally, as we're moving into the next section, I talk about standings, but it's going to be crucial here. It'd be really hard for the Sounders to completely fall out of the playoff picture. But with each passing week, they can help themselves get a better seed. So we look at the standings right now. In the West, St. Louis, 49 points. I feel like it's going to be hard to catch them. They've been on a torrid pace. Their goal differential is pretty solid. Second place, LAFC. The Sounders sit 1 point behind LAFC. LAFC has 43 points. The Sounders have 42 points. But LA currently still has the game in hand. Sitting behind both of those teams in fourth place is Vancouver. Vancouver has 41 points, but has 2 games in hand, which is scary. Yeah, don't like that. Dallas is sitting just outside of the playoff picture. They are currently at 35 points, but they are 1 spot behind Kansas City, who is on the outside looking in. So, yes, very interesting. Yeah. Goodness. So, anyway, sorry, got to focus myself. I started to look at the table a lot. Colorado is next for the Sounders. Colorado sits at the very bottom of the Western Conference. You got to take care of business, obviously. It doesn't matter where people stand if you're not going to handle business. After Colorado, this is all on the road, by the way. Both of these next 2 games are on the road. They'll head over to Nashville, and they'll play a Nashville team that's holding on to a playoff spot. They're 7th in the Eastern Conference at this current point in time. They're still a dangerous roster. After those 2 games on the road, we go into October here when the next 2 games are at home, which is nice. They'll play the LA Galaxy, who are the second worst teams points-wise in the Western Conference, and then they'll play Vancouver, which will be a huge battle, at least looking at where these teams stand right now. And Vancouver has already clinched Cascadia Cup at this point in the season, which is wild. And then I want to say likely by that time, the last game of the regular season, October 21st, Seattle goes to St. Louis. I'd like to think that seeding will have been figured out by that point in time, but things are crazy. Who knows? But that's where they sit. They'll play 2. Wait, 1. Oh, yeah, they play 2 teams who are currently in playoff standing. In the next 3 if you include the next 5 with St. Louis, and 2 that are out of it. So it's very much going to be able to handle business. It's great that you've got Christian Roldan back. That's a big help. It's just about keeping him healthy, obviously. But yeah, I don't think it's far-fetched to think that the Sounders finish in the top 4. They'll obviously do much higher, though, if they play a lot better than what we've seen and can actually finish their chances. So we'll see if they're able to do that. Anyway, as I mentioned, their next match, as they sit at an 11-win, 9-loss, 9-draw record with 42 points, 9th in the entire league, 3rd in the Western Conference, as I've just stated. September 20th at the Colorado Rapids. That is a 6:30 p.m. Pacific time kickoff. So before we get to the rain, I was going to transition there straight over because they're similar in a lot of regards in terms of finishing chances, not being able to finish chances, not knowing where they're going to finish in playoff seeding. We have our Kraken, who it started today with the rookie camp. Rookie camp was as I mentioned, by the time you see this, it's today. That will have happened, but we got some updates on rookie camp and training camp. Finally, we've got updates on that. So, rookie camp is September 18th and 19th. All of these dates that I'm going to mention to you are free and open to the public up at Kraken Community Iceplex in Northgate. Starting, both of them are 11 o'clock gates. Training camp is September 21st through 22nd, 24th and 25th, 27th and 29th. Then October 1st through 5th, 7th and 9th. Obviously, you see some gaps in there. A lot of those gaps are because the team will have preseason in there as well, and those are the games that I'm not including in training camp dates. They will have special theme days and giveaways announced for training camp, including training camp kickoff, as I mentioned, on the 21st. The 22nd is Forwards Day. The 24th is Military Recognition Day. The 27th is Defenseman Day. 29th is National Coffee Day. And I thought this was a little odd of a standout, but training camp is brought to you by Starbucks, so that's why it makes sense. The 1st of October is Kids Day, and then the 3rd, maybe the best day, is Goalie Day. So that will be a lot of fun there. We've got all of those dates announced for training camp. As I mentioned, every single date, whether it be rookie camp to training camp, is all free and open to the public up at the Kraken Community Iceplex up at Northgate. So also, some piece of news that we got, General Manager Ron Francis confirmed that he's been told he can send forward in the 2022 number 4 overall pick, Shane Wright, to the AHL if he doesn't make the NHL squad this year. Francis and the Kraken had sought exemption to these current rules that would have forced him to go back to the OHL this year. But the team general manager did say that he fully hopes he makes the team. And Wright today, after rookie camp, did say himself that he hopes and is fully planning on making the team as well. So that's it for Kraken-related news. What's upcoming for them is rookie camp tomorrow, by the time this is recorded. I mean, by the time this is seen, and then training camp for the week after that. So we get into it with the Reign here, and this one was frustrating. The final time that these teams will meet in the regular season, and the Reign fall to the Portland Thorns on the road by a 2-goal margin. Our player of the match, midfielder Olivia Vandriat Olo, had the best match rating on the Reign, 7.0 with 1 shot, 78% passing, 3 interceptions, and 14 recoveries. The Reign just made some silly mistakes defensively, some poor mistakes. This comes after the news that Fallon Tullis-Joyce has been transferred to Manchester United. I say it now without having the screen up just because of the fact that, I mean, this is something that's been big with the Reign, especially. We've got some other stuff that relates to the Reign as well, team news-wise, but this is the first game they've played without her. Claudia Dickey was in net, and kind of it was a bumpy road for not only her, but the defense as well. And this is a tough one. I mean, it's a tough test against arguably the best team in the entire NWSL, and the Reign fall here. They fall. They had 9 shots. I think they're credited with 9 shots, but it really wasn't. It didn't feel like that. They only had 1 chance created. 3 chances went to Portland. It was a tough one. It was a really tough one. 14 shots for Portland, 3 big chances. They missed 2 of them. The Reign 1 big chance and they missed it. 9 total shots. The Reign had 6 corners though. I do remember that, and it wasn't all that great. Not like they did much on the corners there. Trying to see if there's anything else. Yeah, well, and then I always try to go through some of the statistics here on FootMob, and they've got a new thing. I think it's new where it's top stats, and like I think, let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Yeah, almost all of the Portland players, starting 11, made it into the top stats and ratings before we get to a Reign player, which was Olo, and then Olivia Moultrie, who was subbed in, beats the rest of the Reign players. Which so it was a really tough one. It was a really tough one, but the finishing chances remain an issue for this club here. You're still wondering, when is this going to change? This happened after the Racing Louisville game. It was like, hey, you're able to generate chances, but you can't finish them. This has been the talk of the team the last 2 years, and I keep having to talk about it. So I'm going to try and not go further into it because we've already talked about this sort of thing. The Reign, as the final stretch comes here, they've got 3 matches remaining left in the regular season to kind of figure out where they're going to be standings-wise. And they're not going to be easy games necessarily. The first two games of these last three, both of them will be at home, are against teams that currently sit in a playoff spot. The Spirit sit a point behind the Reign in sixth place, and the Courage sit a point above the Reign at fourth place. Their final game of the year is against the Chicago Red Stars, which is on the road as well. And the Red Stars have the least amount of points in the league, but it isn't going to be easy. Portland, they sit atop the league at 32 points. They'll likely win the Shield for the regular season champion. But yeah, you play the Courage on October 1st at home. They sit above you in points right now by 1 point. Their form isn't super great, but they're still hanging around. The Washington Spirit, who you'll play in the last regular season home game as well, their form's not as great either. So you're still kind of hanging around, but there are other teams who are just outside of the playoff picture who are gaining ground, who have much better form. You're going to want to pick it up. You're going to want to pick it up fast. Things are got to change quick. But there's some positive news, some happy news that we'll get to here. On the 12th, we found out that 5 Reign players were named to the U.S. Women's National Team roster for the September FIFA window. Alana Cook, Megan Rapinoe, she'll be playing in her farewell game for the U.S. Women's National Team there. Sofia Huerta, Rose Lavelle, and Emily Sonnet. Also on this day, the club picked up the 2024 option for midfielder Jess Fishlock. Later on in the week, they'd pick up the 2024 option for forward Jordan Heidema. So you're locking some of these pieces in here for next year. That's great. I'd love to see a Rose Lavelle extension. Would love that. But that hasn't come as yet. There's a lot of change going on in the club, and that's very interesting. As I mentioned, Fallon Tullis-Joyce is now with Manchester United. So the Reign goalkeeper depth chart is there with Claudia Dickey and Laurel Ivory. So that'll be something to worry about when expansion comes along there. When the expansion draft comes along, it's a lot. It's a lot for the Reign, and I'm sure it's a lot for the players. So try to give them some slack. I know they're probably dealing with a lot of this change. They're still trying to finish out the regular season. They're in a playoff chase, so it isn't going to be easy. As I mentioned, they've got their next 2 games are against teams that are fighting for playoff seeding as well. As the Reign try to improve from that 5th place spot, they sit at an 8-win, 8-loss record, 3 draws on the year, 5th in the league table, and they don't play until October 1st. So some time there. They've got the September FIFA window for those players, but definitely some time to kind of sit back and say, hey, we've got to figure out this finishing stuff. I don't know how to address that. It'll be certainly interesting to see that. It's not like it's necessarily a lineup thing because the lineup changes pretty regularly, but it's going to be tough to kind of end up higher. They're going to really need to focus. They're going to need a few teams to move out of the way and get some outside help. I talk about with other teams in their playoff chases and needing other teams to lose, so on and so forth. But they will need that. So, anywho's it. We'll wrap it up here with our Seattle Star of the Week. And just because of his excellent performance and because of how, again, talked about the word underrated, not wanting to use that, because of how consistently good he has been for the Seahawks, I went with Tyler Lockett as my Seattle Star of the Week. Again, continues to be rock solid, has been a big force for the Seahawks, whether it be on the field, in the locker room, and just being a really consistent player. He is actually my player of the week to watch, player of the game to watch, key player of the game when we do our game day post here. But just considering how big he came up, he got his first touchdown was big, nice over the shoulder one back of the end zone from Geno Smith in the second half of this game. And then this one here, there's the photo. I mentioned in the beginning, I was like, it'll be pictured, and I forgot that it was at the end of the show here. Poking the goal line, poking the pylon to get the touchdown in overtime as the Seahawks march down with their possession to win it. He has been huge, and he should be remembered as one of the best Seahawks receivers of all time. So with that, that'll wrap up our show for the September 18th edition. As I mentioned, this is being recorded the day before. So doing this time thing. We will have all sorts of coverage from Kraken rookie and training camp, as well as the fact that the Mariners will be closing out their regular season. It'll be a hell of a final homestand. So you're going to want to follow us on all the social medias below us that you see here. We're also on TikTok now and trying to be more proactive about posting on TikTok. So make sure you follow us on the things here. And until we see you next week, take care of yourselves, be well, and do whatever you can, whatever you need to have a great day.